Good evening, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Bhakti Community. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today, Bhakti On, where today's topic is After the Spark. Inspiration may begin the journey, but consistency carries you home. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and a former monk. We have around 9 members on Zoom, and people are still dialing in. I believe Vaish is also dialing in. So just take a moment and catch up with everyone. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for always helping out in making sure we go live. A consistent, reliable partner that I have. Thank you so much. Welcome. And we have Amit, Radhakrupa, Hare Krishna. We have got Cheryl. We've got Matt. Welcome back, Matt. Thank you for joining again. We have, Vaish is here. Good evening, Vaish. Welcome to Bhakti On.
Thank you very much. And it's great to see all of you. So, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. I would like to start tonight with a short meditation introduction to the subject matter. So, I'm going to start a drone, and if you like, you can relax for a minute. As in, take a moment to sit up a little straighter than you were a minute ago, and close your eyes if you wish. And I'm going to give you a kind of guided introduction to the topic today, beginning with this drone in the key of middle C. So just relax and breathe. Bring your intention to your breath if you like. Try closing your eyes. Tonight we're going to be talking about steadiness. One of the main topics of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna asks about it in the second chapter, what it means to be steady. And he uses the word stita. This is a theme of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna brings Arjuna again and again to steadiness of identity. And it's also the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when asked by his disciple Sanatana Goswami how to be steady. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins this teaching in the Sanskrit, Dehi nosmin yata dehe, and telling Arjuna, you're not your body, you're the eternal self. As soon as I focus my attention on the body and identify with it, then I feel fear, as the body's always changing. And it's faced with non-existence. And later in the second chapter of the Gita, when Arjuna asks, what is a stita pragya, which means somebody who's fixed in consciousness, he asks what are the symptoms of someone who is fixed in consciousness. How does he act in this world? Krishna says that such a person is not affected by the flow of desires that come into the mental system. He or she is able to rise above the desires by the intelligence and notice that I'm not these desires, they're simply flowing through my mental system. And he also says that a person becomes fixed when he or she feels satisfaction from one's own consciousness. And later, he then speaks about steadiness as steadiness in purpose. When he tells Arjuna that one should have a sense of one's mission in life, and that should be the grounding feature of one's life. He calls it vyavasayatmika buddhir, an intelligence fixed in the ultimate purpose of that person's life, not chasing every new attraction or a fad. One has absolute conviction in one's duty and sticks to it. And we find in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about steadiness as abhyasa, or practice. Can you be steady in practice? Because the mind wanders, he says you have to learn to bring it back. Steadiness is not never deviating or falling, but knowing how to return again and again, he says in the 6th chapter, to one's identity and to one's purpose in life. And throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions how a person who has achieved steadiness isn't disturbed by the changes of the external world. He mentions happiness and distress, honor and dishonor. Such a person remains the same, whether you win or lose, or you gain something or you lose something. He doesn't let these reversals, whether up or down, dictate his course of action. He remains fixed in service. Sama dukkha sukha. Sama means equal in happiness or distress when it comes to one's external situation. And above all, a person is steady, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, when he or she is steady in devotion. That is, one has a sense that my life is meant for the ultimate purpose of serving the Supreme. And then that person is anchored by that conception. So steadiness means remaining established in reality, that I'm not this body. And even as everything else changes, I go on with my ultimate purpose of life. I'm not here to be comfortable. I'm here to practice and to develop the highest level of consciousness, which is consciousness in union with the divine, otherwise known as Krishna consciousness. So just take a moment to ruminate on those concepts from the Bhagavad Gita. And I'll move us back into the Zoom room. And we thank our Tempura musicians for participating today. And welcome back from your guided meditation. Okay, thanks everyone for taking a little time to introspect. I enjoyed mentioning those various aspects of steadiness. And now I'm going to go through them one at a time, or some different categories, and also mention some of the symptoms in a more granular way of one who's advancing spiritually. Interestingly, this is a categorical description, has nothing to do with ritual, but in any sphere of life, you may notice these symptoms of steadiness, but especially in Krishna consciousness, the practice of bhakti yoga, steadiness arises from finding one's true identity and staying fixed in it. But there are noticeable byproducts that come from that. So, JM, maybe somebody wants to introduce somebody. Let's do that before we move forward. Would anybody who's here for the first time, would somebody like to introduce somebody who's for the first time, or introduce him or herself and say hello? Just be happy to welcome you if you are joining for the first time.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for having me here. I'm grateful to be here. I just have a bit of an offering that I'd like to put out there. At 6 p.m. on Thursday nights in Australia, I hold a Bhagavad Gita reading group, and I have a monk online, and he can assist in like answering questions or giving clarity. So I'd just like to invite anyone that's keen to explore the Gita and Krishna's love to just like write me a message in the chat, and I'd love to welcome you like to the group. I'm not sure what time it is in the US. I haven't, gone that far with it, but it might be early morning.
Here in the US, it's 5:42 p.m.
Perfect. That's Krishna conscious time.
Okay. So when some of your participants write in the chat, then we can introduce them and what they say. Does anybody else have someone who's here they'd like to introduce, or if you're here for the first time, you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm here for the first time. My name
Welcome.
is Galen. Hi.
Yeah. Can you tell everyone your name?
My name is Galen.
Hi, Galen. We met last night.
We did
Thank
meet.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Glad you're here. Okay. JM, anyone else?
I'm just checking chat. Yeah, people are welcoming you. Galen, thanks for joining in here today. Vicky and Lavanya, welcome you. Where are you dialing in from, Galen?
I'm in Walnut Creek, California. I am visiting my brother right now, so I'll be in this area for the next a little less than 2 weeks left.
Okay, thanks. And did you sign up at Bhakti community online, or didn't get a chance?
I haven't yet, but
Okay.
I'm planning on doing so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here for the first time?
Okay, JM, let's get started.
Okay.
Talking about consistency, I find always as a calming and enlivening topic. It's a word that is, and a phrase, and a meaning, the meaning of which is derived in modern times from Latin. Originally, it's in the Sanskrit language as well. It comes from consistere. Con means together, and sisterity means to stand. And the word sistere is cognate in English with stand. That's where we get it. We find it in English, in Sanskrit, with nishta, ni plus sta. Sta and sistere are cognate. Stiti means stability. And as I mentioned in the opening meditation, stita pragna means one who's of steady intelligence. And they all derive from the Sanskrit root sta, which means to stand. And so one of the main questions from the philosophical point of view is, where are we standing? Where do we find a place to stand where we have 2 feet on the ground? Well, we could talk about what Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita. If you identify yourself as a mind or body, then you might find that it's shifting, and then you might feel unsteady because of the changes that are going on with the physical body and mind, both of which are changing constantly. So the way to stand firmly, we'll talk about. We know the proverb of the tortoise and the hare, and that from Aesop's fables is a way in which doesn't mean necessarily if you're fast, you're going to finish last, but if you're steady is the point of the tortoise and the hare, then you're likely to be more successful. And so one of the first elements of the measurement of advancement in spiritual practice, or one of the first benchmarks of advancing, is called steadiness. There are a few phases of spiritual life that are mentioned by the teachers of Bhakti. And the first one is our entry level, which is called Shraddha. There's an awakening. The word Shraddha is a dual word in Sanskrit. I'm not moving on yet, so I'll let you know. Shrad means the heart, and da is an active verb. It means where you place something, da. So what are you putting your heart into? In fact, we can come into the room just for a minute. And so the first awakening is a sense that the heart moves towards a higher value in life. There's a value one sees in developing oneself, one's consciousness. This is universal because it's our nature. We are spiritual by nature, and it may arise from various circumstances in life. For instance, frustration is a very helpful phase of one's life. When one becomes completely frustrated, then there's a time for renewal. For instance, if anybody has experience of writing something and then becoming frustrated with one's own writing and thinking, I'm not really speaking what I want to say. I'm not writing what I want to say about myself or about the world. And then you scrap the whole thing and start over with a kind of determination that I'm going to just be real. And frustration in one's life can cause this impetus for wanting to just get down to the basic, most important aspect of life. One may also feel subjected to various kinds of miseries and sufferings. I mean, the idea of frustration is a kind of suffering as well, but there are many more. And one may then think there must be a way out of this. And one may also have a glimpse sometimes of one's nature beyond the body. Sometimes people have had experiences in their life where they have a transcendent experience and they just have a sense there's something more to life. And this awakening of Shraddha happens generally when one comes in contact with those who are already practicing, and they're such a high vibration that by contact with such people, one also becomes inspired. There's a sense in one's heart. This is also a description of Shraddha that, oh, I'd like to be like these people. And from that, which is called sadhu sangha, or association with those who are practicing, one thinks, oh, that's a higher value in life. The way they're practicing, what their values are, sadhu sangha. And it can lead to the shraddha, or awakening of a sense that I would like to do that too. And then the next stage is that one has a desire to be around people who are practicing at a high level. And this leads next to a following of a system. So one may think, well, spiritual life just means do as you wish, but there is a way in which one may become serious and then find that there's a systematic path that one can follow that has been chalked out by those who have walked before me. And then one may think, let me follow that path. In the beginning, it's wide open, just like when you go to a university. In the undergraduate study, you may take all kinds of elective classes and be very eclectic and think of many different pathways or ways that you want to specialize or study. But in spiritual life, there's a sense of exploration. And then one may come to a specific discipline where one resonates very deeply with the people, the practice, and so forth. And most likely in any of those systems, there's been a path chalked out. And this special path is the path one follows next to come to steadiness. But in between taking up the practice and then reaching steadiness, there's a period of time where there's unsteadiness. This is not a big surprise, because in any discipline we know that we start with unconscious incompetence. That is, we don't even know that we're not good at something, because we haven't thought of it yet. We don't know what we don't know. But then when we become aware that there is a higher path, we may become conscious of our incompetence and see that I'd like to do this, but I have a long way to go. And that's an interim period where, following the practice, one may feel unsteady. It's quite natural. And of course, I could say that's natural in any discipline, but especially in the practice of Bhakti Yoga, it's been chalked out that this is a kind of ocean one has to cross. The crossing of the ocean is not so easy. You have to figure out how to go across it. And as one practices, one has to be tolerant of one's own ineptitude and be able to continue step after step until one comes to this very treasured position, which is called Nishta, which I already talked about as the place to stand, where you feel that now I'm in a place where I'm not pushed off the track, very steady, 2 feet on the ground, Nishta, standing in place. And there are some symptoms of that which are mentioned in the very granular teachings of the previous Bhakti Yoga acharyas, or those who taught by precept and example. One of them was named Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, VCT for short. And he wrote a booklet about it, about these different phases. It goes beyond Nishta, but that's what we're talking about tonight. And he said there are several symptoms you can notice in yourself when you're becoming steady. And also referred to the Bhagavad Gita, as I did, when Krishna talks about what it feels like to be steady. First of all, it's nice to know that that's one of the first signposts, or first ways in which we may notice ourselves advancing on the path, is to come to steadiness. Or even before that, we could notice that we're unsteady. That's also a path, as a section of the path. But we may feel a little frustrated or put upon by our own senses and our own inability to be steady. But we should know that there is something waiting for us on the other side. Nishta. It's a highly coveted position to be steady. So first from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that Stita Prajna. Again, that word steadiness means person's intelligence becomes steady, has a sense of inner happiness, which is driving that person, and also has an awareness that I have a choice. This is called Vivek. I can make a discriminatory choice. I can make a choice at any moment to follow the path or not follow the path. And such a person becomes very aware of it. Somebody else might not even be aware that there's a choice. They don't have any knowledge, they don't have any association, and therefore they're compelled to move in a way that is not helpful, they're not advancing. But at least one who's decided to follow the path and then feels pushed around by one's own senses and circumstances may then think, okay, at least I'm in the recovery process and I'm making advancement, even though I'm not very good at it yet. And you can think of any practice that you've ever done. For instance, if you've ever learned to play a musical instrument or learned algebra when you were a kid, or learned to do some motor skill like juggling or whatever you may have done, and you notice that at first there's, for instance, in juggling, you drop the ball a lot, the balls, and after a while you may have a cycle where, wow, I did 10 in a row. Or a musical piece where you feel that it's impossible on Monday, but it becomes not only possible, but you're doing it somewhat by Thursday. And by 2 weeks later, if you practice every day for half an hour, then you'll come to a stage where you feel more confident and maybe I could play this in front of a few people. So there's a way in which in that interim period, one is noticing one's incompetency, but has the wherewithal to continue practicing. And in the book mentioned by VCT called Madhurya Kadambini, this teacher says that there are several symptoms you can notice when you step into the realm of steadiness called Nishta. Somebody could write it in there on the chat, that Nishta steadiness. One of the first symptoms is that one does not become sleepy when practicing. As an example, in the practice of bhakti, there's a daily observance of the names of the Supreme by repeating them, called japa. And in that practice, you're with your own mind. So it's an opportunity to notice, how steady am I? You can even rate yourself, put a number down in your notebook that you're keeping for your bhakti practice and say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do today? 10 means completely steady. I was fully focused on the chanting. I was able to hear it. 1 means I didn't even do it. Somewhere in the middle means I was on again, off again. And then there's a tendency in practice, notes this teacher, that one may become sleepy. Now it's kind of interesting because if someone tells you that you just won the lottery, they call you up and say, hey, of course you didn't buy a lottery ticket, somebody bought one for you for your birthday and slipped it through your door, and then someone scratched it off and said you just won $20 million. You wouldn't fall asleep likely. You would be attentive and say, are you sure? And your heart might be pounding a little bit and think like, what if that's true? Is this for real? At least you'd be awake. But he says there is a way in which during the practice, because the mind has this tendency to be slothful, you may, even while you're chanting the divine names, you might fall asleep. This is called laya in Sanskrit. So he said, you will notice that when you're practicing bhakti, whether chanting or hearing, which is another practice of bhakti, hearing from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the wisdom literatures in which the transcendental vibration of the spiritual world is contained, and by hearing them, you become purified, but it may put you to sleep. Sometimes people, as soon as they sit down to listen, then they snore. Then they can't keep awake. And so it's noticeable in the steadiness of the practice of bhakti that, oh, I'm not sleepy at all. I'm alert. I'm interested. And then comes another big one that we might be able to relate to. Another symptom of steadiness is the removal of distraction. You can notice this also in your practice of bhakti yoga. Am I distracted? Is there a time in which I am practicing and my mind goes somewhere else and I follow it? I go pick up something else, look at a newspaper. I don't even know if they even make newspapers anymore. But whatever it may be, my mind goes somewhere else away from the practice, and I don't have the power not to follow it. And I just give in to the distraction. There's attraction and distraction. So in the one-pointedness of steadiness, the distraction is gone. One's vitally interested in the topic and doesn't go away. And then there's another symptom of unsteadiness, which when it is eliminated, one is known to also have checked off one of the boxes leading to steadiness, and that is boredom. It means that I'm not sleepy at all. I'm not distracted, but I'm just not interested. It's another niche of the unsteady mind, being bored. And it could be expressed by an emoji, probably. I don't know what the emoji is, but sometimes I hear this word meh. How was it? Meh means, or in Italian, mezza mezz. It was like, okay.
Apparently, like a new word is mid. Like teenagers use it if it's something's just average. Oh, it was mid. I'm like, what is that, Gem? Is
Mid,
that oh just average?
yeah. And yeah, it's probably there in every language. Some said sense of, in Japanese, it's mama, mama des. Mama means, yeah, it was like average, not so interesting. Mama, how was it? Just meh, okay. Mid, meh. And so, I mean, just the world's an interesting place, actually. Einstein said you can see it either as a miracle, everything that happens, for instance, the sunrise. It's talking about our observance of the world. You might see the sunrise and then think, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Or you may just say, oh, the sun's in my eyes. I've got to go to work. You don't even notice it. It's not a topic of interest to you at all. And so passing by this stage of not being interested or of being bored and realizing that the variety in the spiritual world that you hear about, the sound vibration of the spiritual world that's entering your ears, is so interesting. In fact, in chanting the mantra, one of the symptoms of advancement and realizing one's steadiness is that it's interesting. When you're chanting the mantra and it's not interesting, it becomes torturous because then your mind goes everywhere else except for the mantra. But when you're interested in it and you think, that's an amazing sound. It sounds so interesting. I'd like to hear it again and again and again. So you keep chanting. And this is a symptom of steadiness. And then there's a way in which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, VCT, describes how the senses get the better of us. They're embedded in their objects in this world. As soon as we're born, the senses then have their natural relationships with the sense objects. And they gravitate in that direction. So he says another symptom of steadiness is that although the senses gravitate towards their objects, you're aloof from that activity. You may see them go in a certain direction, but you notice that oh, that's just them, the senses doing their thing. Your intelligence isn't disturbed. You're not pulled in that direction. And then the fifth one, there's five altogether. The fifth one is there may be innate qualities, including anger. If anybody cuts you off on the road or doesn't use their turn signal and then puts you in peril, and you might feel some burning in your chest, like, why, how dare they drive like that? They almost hit me. Or uh, you feel some sense of envy or lust just arises. These are impressions that we acquire from association in the material world, says VCT, that are there lurking, latent impressions. And they can arise at any time, just like you're sitting at a lake and it's very peaceful, but then a bubble comes up to the top and bursts, a little air bubble. And you think, where'd that come from? Who knows? It came from the mud underneath and it was all there all the time and just got released right then. And similarly, we have these innate qualities that might come to the surface. There's a definite sense that, oh, these are diminished. They've been suppressed. They're not coming up like they used to come up. This is noticeable. So VCT says that these five, the aggregate of these five, you can notice when you come to steadiness in your practice, they're no longer present or they're conspicuous by their absence. You know, what happened? I'm not sleepy. I used to fall asleep. I'm not distracted. I don't want to go anywhere else. Or I'm very interested. I don't find this boring. Or the senses act up and it's like you're so absorbed elsewhere that they don't pull you in another direction. The ways of the senses seem foreign to you, that they've got their own life. Or even more than that, there's a way that the senses begin to cooperate. That they feel more happy when they're aligned in the practices of bhakti, which is described in the teachings of another great teacher, Rupa Goswami. He says, by using your senses in the practices of bhakti, which start with hearing, and then chanting, remembering, using your hands, your legs, all the senses in devotional service, then they get purified. So they don't even have the tendency, they don't like the things they used to like before. They disappear. This is called a higher taste. And it's described in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes it as param, higher. And the drishva, he said, you see something higher, you taste something higher when you engage your senses in divine service. Therefore, the senses then start to become your friend, starting with the mind. The mind agrees with you. Let's practice. Your intelligence may say, let's practice, and then your mind may say, no, let's do something else. But then it starts going along with you and saying, no, I agree. I'd like to do this. This sequence is also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a famous paragraph that's so encouraging because it describes the path to this steadiness where you begin the practice and then you find yourself struggling, but then you find yourself gradually improving, and then you find yourself at a level where you notice that these distractions have abated, and then they're no longer there, and then you're free. You have a standing in devotional service. Up till then, you may wonder, can I even stand here? Will I get pushed off? Sometimes when people approach the process, they think, can I actually do this? Could I maintain this throughout my life? Aren't there so many other things I have to attend to? But when steadiness arises in one's life, in one's heart and mind, there's a sense of, why would I do anything else? Everything else can go on, but my main thing is to stay fixed in this. And that's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita as Vyavasayatmika buddhi. Says your intelligence becomes so fixed on not only the beauty, but also the sensibility of practicing devotional service. And therefore, you feel naturally happy because you now have a life. When people say get a life, this is what it means. It means get a life where you're not pushed around, not bullied by your senses, not forced to fall asleep when the most interesting thing in the world is upon you, and so forth. I think I'll pause there and see if there's any question. About this, or maybe simpler, if there's any reflection, anything you heard that piqued your interest that you would like to reflect back. Amit, good to see you.
Good to see you. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. So I sometimes don't know spiritually what the steady thing to do. So like last week on X, one of the most famous video or most looked viewed video was the video of Rath Yatra in Sharanagati, which is a small Hare Krishna village in British Columbia in Canada. And it was called that Rath Yatra was called an invasion by some some political actors, and it became one of the top videos. And I know some of these, or at least one of them in person. So and I've been to the Rath Yatra in Sharanagati, and I know that it's a celebration. It's a there's nothing hateful there. So I just don't know, like, from a spiritual steadiness point of view, if I should engage with these people, because these are people I know and they got hundreds of millions of views on X, or I should just not bother with them. Because at one hand, I feel like I could make life more difficult for them, or maybe I should just be pacifist. I don't know.
Uh-huh. Well, that's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? And this is one of the challenges that comes up for anyone practicing any discipline in this world, is the question about who should I spend time with? And the basic answer is, again, in any discipline, not just bhakti, is if you have a clear idea of your goal, you should gravitate towards those who would help nurture your bhakti. And if you find a group that may be detrimental to that, then you may find ways to not associate as much. Or if you're obligated, then you have to do it in an official way, and generally not get too dragged down by the association, by drinking it in. That is, you're there because you have to be there. If you have to work with somebody or family association, then the Bhagavatam mentions get along because you have to, but don't get too entangled in topics when people have some misunderstanding. Or if they're open and they want to hear about it, then you can take some time to explain it. And if they're open and reasonable, then you can continue. Those are a few options. Ishvari Radha Devi Dasi, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for this very interesting talk. I like what you said about frustration in life is very helpful. I know in my life, when I first come in contact with few people who were practicing bhakti yoga, at first I was thinking, I don't know if I can do this. I have too many problems. But then when they had like a regular program in their home and they invited me, once a month they used to do it. So I went, and at that time my children were small. So they were very mischievous. And it felt like they were like really distracting the whole atmosphere, but the lady who was conducting it, she was not disturbed at all. She was very happy that, you know, I came with my kids, and she was very helpful in giving me this understanding that anybody can do this, because it's very simple, this bhakti yoga. You just chant. The mantra meditation is very helpful. And when you do it over time, you'll see yourself how it's helping you. And now I see it. After such a long time, I was thinking, I said, I don't know if I can get up to that level where you're talking about, like, when you first start practicing, you feel this tiredness or this sleepiness, or, you know, your mind is constantly thinking, what if, what about this, what about, like, so many things. But then if you keep at it, if you keep focus on that mantra and you just do it, eventually all those problems go away. I've noticed that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Ishwari Raha. One of the great mantras of our time, just do it. And this is the hallmark of practice. One realizes by exercising one's intelligence that this is the right thing to do. And despite what the mind says, one does it anyway. And in due course of time, just like taking medicine, it begins to act and one notices the effect, and nothing succeeds like success. If you start noticing improvement, it's quite exciting to notice that about one's practice, that you're improving. And then there's a momentum that grows. So this is called devotional service in practice. And it's good to be forewarned that there will be obstacles, but the result of practicing, getting to that place of safety, of nishta, where you can stand on your own 2 feet. What an exhilarating position to know this, that you can be steady. One of the first teachings of the great teacher Rupa Goswami is about being able to overcome the urges of the senses. It's in his book, which is called The Essence of All Advice, Upadeshamrita, and he talks about how every one of the senses is urging us to act in a certain way. And he said, when you're able to come to steadiness and not be pushed around by the senses, then you become a valuable person for everybody in the world. He said everybody in the world will become your student, because everybody's the student of their senses. They just follow. The main religion of this world, he says, is Mano Dharma, the religion of the mind. There's only one person in the congregation, and each person is just following the dictates of the mind and the senses. When you're able to overcome that, he said, then you become valuable for other people. Jan, we got a we have a few things. Please,
Yep.
go ahead.
Ankit says Bhakti is like a wildfire. It starts with a spark and steady efforts and just going to engulf everything.
That's a nice one. Thank you.
And Sanskriti says, I could relate a lot with the point you brought up about you feel inspired by someone who is very good at the practice and a living example of what you want to follow and be. I wasn't very sure about Bhakti Path and had my doubts, but in 2025 May, I got to know His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj was coming to San Francisco, and I went over to see him. And the minute I came in front of him, I was overwhelmed with compassion and love. That day after going home, I had a transformation of heart and started chanting since then.
Yeah, and that's the experience of sadhu sangha I talked about. That is, sangha means to connect, associate with somebody, and sadhu means somebody who's steeped in the practice. And this is the main impetus, actually, for the practice of bhakti. When one comes in contact with somebody whose spiritual vibration is so high that we become affected, and then our life changes. So that's consistent with the description that Vishwanath Chakravarti gives about how we move to the next step. Bravo. Thank you very much. Okay, Jam, I'm going back to the board because I have a few other practical points to make about steadiness. And let's see where we are here. I think we're at number 4. Steadiness beats speed. So slow and steady wins the race. You don't necessarily have to go slow, but steady sometimes dictates or requires that we go a little slower than we think we have to go in order to get it right. Or you don't have to go fast, you should just be steady. So think about the process of steadiness as repeating the same activities every day without getting bored. And then you find your ground. As we already gave in the next slide, nishta means to stand. So we have this saying in English, find your ground, find where you stand and remain there. It means firmness, nishta, standing fast. And then coming to number 6, building a system. There is a system, a practice of bhakti that is well known, it's well chalked out. And stick with the program, stick with the system. Don't wait till you're inspired or think, I can only do it when I'm inspired. You have to use your intelligence at this point to follow the process and not wait to be inspired, because inspiration may come or it may go. But if you use your intelligence to follow the system, once you're awakened to the possibility of improving yourself, then it will carry you beyond any of your unsteadiness. And so within a system, there's a kind of structure for your life. And this is the beginning practice of bhakti, means structure. You should have in place a support system so that you can do your practices daily. We should know at the beginning of the practice that if we don't have support systems, we're going to falter, or more likely, we're going to fade, and then it'll diminish day by day, and we won't even know we're losing our practice. So that's why it's important to set yourself up for success. I can go more into that. One of the very symptoms of somebody who's sincerely trying to stick with a system is to use the bookends of the day as your most important practice times. So at night, you should set up what you're going to do the next day. It's hard to do because in the evening, the mode of ignorance or tamas comes in and your mind just wants to do whatever it wants to do. But if you can plan a way that in the evening time, I set at least some parameters for what I'm going to do the next day, and especially if you write it down, and then you can set up your environment for what you're going to do. Bhakti practices might include, as we said, chanting. It might also include hearing something from the Bhakti scriptures. So you want to put those things out. Set it up the night before. Practical tip. And then remember what it means to be a professional. This is something that Stephen Pressfield talks about in his book, The War of Art, when he mentions writing, which was one of the most difficult things to do because almost every writer in the world, including very accomplished ones, say that facing the blank page is torturous in some ways because the mind has so much resistance. And we'll find that in chanting also. And so what is it? What is the solution for that? He says, be a professional, go pro. That means you have to show up. It's not a question of whether you feel like it or not. You just say, okay, at this particular time, that's when I start my practice. And that's when you start to dig in to the system that will bring you to steadiness. Okay, coming to 7, keep the streak. This is very important. This is called Sankhya Purvaka Nama, which means that you have to count streaks and keep them going as long as possible. Don't skip a 24-hour cycle. The sun goes around and we go from morning till night. Make sure that during that period of time, when you're still awake, that you have your portion of practice that you've decided to do. Don't skip a day. And keep your numbers steady. Pick a number of how much you're going to chant, how much you're going to read, whatever, anything else you can count. And then stay fixed in it. That's something that you can do by writing it down, making it visible, and then doing it every day. That's when momentum can come into your life. And then eliminate gaps. If you notice places where you're getting distracted, become aware of them and see about ways that you can get rid of distractions and try to improve by finding some freeing some time. Time is vicious for those who take it for granted. So don't take time for granted. Notice that it will be like a vicious animal that will come and devour you if you do take it for granted. And the next one is to start with a vanishingly small segment that you can handle. Small enough that the mind cannot object. In fact, if your mind says, hey, anybody could do that, you could say back to your mind, okay, let's see you do it. But what starts with just a small thing, in the continuance of that, it's quite challenging because you think, okay, within a 24-hour cycle, I'm not going to miss it. But then, after you do it for a week, it's exciting. And then the next week you get distracted. Something dire happens in your life. And you say, well, today I won't do it. You missed your 24-hour cycle. You broke your streak. Steadiness, or the pursuit of steadiness, comes in doing it, even if you don't feel like it. JM, something came in from Chuck. Let's see what he wrote.
Yeah, so Chuck, I was looking up Nishta and came across this nice verse from Veda Base, and he gave the translation. Chuck, do you want to read that?
Sure. In the beginning, there must be faith. Then one becomes interested in associating with pure devotees. Thereafter, one is initiated by the spiritual master and executes the regulative principles under his orders. Thus, one is freed from all unwanted habits and becomes firmly fixed in devotional service. Thereafter, one develops taste and attachment. This is the way of sadhana bhakti, the execution of devotional service according to the regulative principles. Gradually, emotions intensify, and finally, there is an awakening of love. This is the gradual development of love of Godhead for the devotee interested in Krishna consciousness.
Fantastic. And that's the very sequence that I was describing from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that is repeated also in the Bhagavatam and also in the other books like The Nectar of Devotion. Thank you, Chuck. That's a valuable verse to copy. Basics, we always win with basics. Go back to basics and do them regularly. That applies to any discipline, same in bhakti. And don't neglect to do what you can do, because you cannot do everything. Psychological stumbling block, that because I can't do it at the level that somebody else is doing it, or as much as I want to do, then I don't do it at all. That's a trick of the mind to say, then I won't do anything. The way to steadiness is to do it as much as you can, even if you feel you're doing less than you could, even if you feel like I didn't do as much as I did yesterday, do something. Keep the streak going, because in that process, there's a way that you'll notice that I like this better than being distracted. That's a good sign. When the mind is so uproarious and strong that it pulls you away from your practice, and then you think, oh, I'm helpless, I can't do anything. But you say, well, at least I can do one little thing. And if you're able to use your free will in that moment when nobody else is watching, perhaps, and then you have this victory that at least I did one mantra, then that will grow. And those incidents become part of your spiritual portfolio, that you are able to overcome the mind, which is the most powerful force in this world, which is driving us in various ways. And it's worth it because when you come to Nishta, you can stand on the victory stand and receive a nice trophy. And you can have a festival, you can hold a festival and invite all your friends and all the people of the village. You don't have to tell them you achieved steadiness, but you'll know it yourself. And it's the jumping off place for all good things in life and in the practice of bhakti. And that brings us to the end of today's presentation on steadiness. I hope there was something inspirational or practical that you would take away from today. And keep up the great work, because everything that you do, every step that you take in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it's all permanent. In this world, you may make, that is, in the world of commerce or even in health, of course, everything's temporary, but whatever you do in devotional service goes on your permanent record, not just in this life, but in the next life as well. And thank you, everyone, for the nice comments you're putting in, for all the hearts. It's leaving me with a deep feeling in my heart. JM, there are these yogis that live in the Himalayas. Bless their hearts. They spend their time meditating deeply, but they do come out of the cave sometimes because they need a little sunshine, and there's fruits and roots to be gathered. And they do see one another on the high peaks of the Himalayas, and being so joyful at noticing that their colleagues are there, they raise their arms high in the air and they call out this phrase, Hari Bol, which, by the way, is a password that you can use anywhere in the world. If you meet a yogi, a bhakti yogi, or any kind of yogi, and you say Hari Bol, they'll just let you in. It could be a festival or their house or a place where nobody else can get in. But if you put your hands up in the air and say Hari Bol, they'll let you in and feed you. So it's a good thing to know. But it's also really a heartfelt way to say goodbye. So this tonight, when we say Hari Bol, we're putting all our good wishes in our palms and we're pointing them to everybody else or one person you want to pick today. And we're trying to send that energy of steadiness, that keep up the good work, do as much as you can every day, and work towards Nishta. Have a place to stand in the world so you can do good for others and not get pushed around by your silly mind. Should we try it?
Yes.
Haribo!
Haribo!
Haribol!
Haribo!
Haribo!
Haribo!